Hello and welcome to my podcast, Learn Reiki and Connect. So it's with me, Tracy Matthews. So this week we're talking about how to find real happiness in life. And before we talk about that, I really just want to just say a warm welcome to everybody, because this space is about helping each other to connect to the light within, and that's that higher self. And here's what I've noticed, that if we listen to that part of ourselves, it really helps us out. And this is what this podcast is all about. So it's helping those who want to tune in to their inner voice. And it's about living from the inside out, listening to that part of you. So that when we enter into difficult parts of our life or the spiritual journey, or we don't feel happy, then we can tune in and seek all the wisdom and knowledge and actually try and find out why that we're not feeling so happy. What sent us, off rail and we're not feeling so good? Because my journey has helped me to listen, trust the higher self. And in my work, I look through the lens of the soul. And to be honest, that's how you and I will see our truth. Remember who we are and essentially what we've come here to do. So we're going to jump right into this podcast this week, where we're talking about how to find real happiness in life. So how would you answer that question? So have you found real happiness in your life? How's that going for you? So we're going to look at, what is happiness? Is happiness dependent on favourable circumstances? And, in other words, when things are going good. And how to find real happiness in life. So stick around. Don't go anywhere. Stay with me. Hit the subscribe button and join me every week, because this is the place where we're going to talk about some of these kind of topics. So we are looking at what is real happiness. So what would you say to that? How can we find that? And I guess if you put 100 people, different people in a room, and you ask them that same question, they'd all seem to answer that pretty much the same. And it tends to be more about our physical world. And what that looks like is that, we want more money. We want love, maybe find the one, a nice house. And, I often say that money can give a person a level of freedom, comfort and choice. I do believe that. But is that what really gives us happiness? And if we were to capture that energy of what happiness really is, what would it look like? Well, it really is a state of being. And that's that feeling of joy, that satisfaction, contentment, fulfillment. So when was the last time you felt that kind of joy? When was the last time that you felt contentment like that? Fulfillment, and that level of satisfaction. Often happiness, it can be fleeting. It can be almost spasmodic, and often we can be sort of look back in retrospect, and it's sort of like associated with a period of time, or maybe we're in our 20s, or maybe when it was like that time, that part of the year, and often that's how we look back. Or perhaps you've come to the conclusion when you do look back, or that was the time that you were really happy, but you're not so now. And then we can wonder, well, what's changed? Why were we happy? Did we understand what even made us happy at that time? And I always find that always quite interesting, is when we haven't got that, is how that we're now very much aware of that and how to get it back. So this really kind of brings us to the question, is happiness dependent on favourable circumstances? So what do you think about that? You know, we often all say it, oh, if only I could win a lottery, I'd be happy. Or when I meet the one, you know, I'm going to be really happy. You know, what is that for you? What have you said recently? Often me and my girls, we often say, oh, if we had a little bit of money, all the things that we could do, can you imagine? And, you know, and I think it's quite interesting how we all make that assumption that if we had that and that, whatever that looks like, 'cause it's all very subjective, then that would make us happy. So, you know, I do believe, like I said, these circumstances, these certain things can give us a level of happiness. And certainly sharing our lives with loved ones and that little bit of extra cash, absolutely. But there are many people that have these needs adequately and fully met, but they're still trying to find real happiness. So how do we find real happiness? And I find it, again, quite interesting with the word real happiness, because if you notice, that word suggests that it's real, it's not imagined, it's actually there, and it's genuine for us. Because like I said, most of our experiences are kind of fleeting moments of joy. Because essentially what we tend to do is we seem to live quite reactively, unless of course we're really present and really happy and we know why we have that level of happiness. But quite often we're not always thinking about that. It's when we're sort of in the absence of it, when things are not 100% right with us, that seems to when we get our thinking cap on. So going back to that sort of living reactively, and there's obviously, when we're in that, there's a level of stress and there's a level of anxiety. And this is where I find that sometimes we overdo the things that give us those fleeting moments. And that's how we can arrive at the fine line of excess. You know, addiction, you know, when that glass of wine makes you feel happy. Well, what if we then start doing a glass of wine all the time? You know, it's that sort of fine line. So then when we go on that line, something else kicks in. And it's like, it's the surface level of stuff isn't then enough. So where are you at with that? And have you found that? It's like there are certain things, yes, we do get joy and there is a happiness there. But what happens when that no longer gives us that happiness because it's a surface thing? So have you noticed that? Is that something that's been happening with you? Because it seems like there's something missing. And I know what that feels like. It's very perplexing. It's very confusing. And sometimes we don't know what it is. We know we haven't got something, but what it actually is very, well, it's a one big question mark. And this is where there is a little bit of a struggle with the surface stuff of what gives us happiness, because we need more. And what that is, that more, we're not really sure where it is. And I always find this quite fascinating and very interesting, because this is where we get to the part of our lives where we start waking up. So there's like a realization of something which is coming from within. And this is really quite a part of our lives where we then start seeking out really of where we can find this real joy and happiness. And it doesn't seem to come from the things that are more on a physical level. And this is when I see a client, and often they express that I need to do something. There is something I need to find out. There's something wrong. There seems to be they know. It's an internal cognizant, a feeling, a sense that this happiness or what's next in their life comes from within. And I recognise that. I absolutely, completely understand that, because this is something I went through too. And I think this is at a point in life and on our path where the inner voice and that higher self gets our attention. And here's the thing. Now, when we don't listen to that or we ignore it, this is when something can affect our mental health. Because from this, we know that something's not right. We're kind of not fully tuned in. We ignore it, or we don't listen to it. And that sort of puts us sort of like on a path of feeling quite low. And then we have low periods. And it's almost like we shift in our state of being. It's like we don't know quite what it is that we need to do or why we're here and what's really going to give us the happiness. And but when we kind of get an inkling that we need to do something, you don't want to do that either. So we go into this horrible limbo, and that will affect your mental health. And, this continues because we don't know why we're feeling that way. And this is where I think as well we misinterpret when we go through that, when really it's that part of you and I that nudges us. It kind of gets our attention. It's trying to sort of get us to do something, and quite often change something, or maybe just shift gears into something that brings you joy. There's a lot that sit in that energy of having to do something, where there is not much happiness in their lives because they feel they've got to do something. We sit in that space. I've done it too. And then when we don't do anything to sort of change it, well, it just escalates. And sometimes this part of us, and why we misinterpret it, because maybe it's time for change, learn something new. Maybe just move into the next chapter in life. But of course what we do is we kind of don't listen or ignore it. Or maybe we just hold on, dig our heels in. This is what I've seen time and time again. When we don't follow our inner voice, that intuition, that part of us that knows something's amiss, that isn't right, but we don't do anything with it. So what happens is we get stuck on the path, or we go off the path. And this will affect a person emotionally, mentally, and physically. And guess what happens? Person's not happy. Even the surface happiness then is even less fleeting than it was. Because essentially you have in you an inner sense. There's a knowing. There's a beautiful feeling. There's the light in you. And your spirit guides and your angels are there. They are helping you to acknowledge that part, to hear it, listen to it, so that you can navigate whatever part of the life where you are. Or maybe you've hit a point where you're just not happy and you don't understand why you're not happy. And of course what happens when we kind of don't do anything, or we sit in it, and incidentally there's nothing wrong with that. That's, we come on our planet and our school of planet Earth to really experience all this. And I've sat in that myself, where we just go down a rabbit hole. We get lost, we get sidetracked, and we kind of learn through the absence of not being happy. And then we get to the point where we're going to go, you know what? I ain't doing this anymore. I'm getting out of this. And that's a time where it's no longer a thought or a feeling. We're forced almost to listen to that part of us. do something different. And of course, this is very subjective. What is for one person is not for another. But essentially, we're sort of back to that question, how to find real happiness in life. Well, you won't get it from anywhere else or from someone else. Obviously, beautiful people in our lives, different souls, connections and family members and people that we connect with, they add and they contribute. But nobody gives us that real feeling of happiness. That sort of comes from within. So it's really all about tuning in to that part of you. It's that part of you that is bigger than the part of you that you're conscious and aware of. I always think the analogy of the higher self is really good because there's a bigger, more connected part of us that is connected to the universe, source, God's spark. That higher self is sort of overseeing, if you like, the bigger me and the mini me. And that's that part of us which is having a physical human experience of life. But we can always really get more of a sense and understanding, and really by listening to that part. And the reason why we're going to find our real happiness in life, because before we got here, we made a plan. And this is where we get that going back to when, we're either off path or we're sort of stuck in the path. There'll be something inside you that will alert you. You're going to feel it, you're going to know it, you're going to hear it, you're going to sense it. And this will all come out in feeling sadness, lost. These are all the symptoms of mental health. But sometimes what happens in our physical 3D world is that we get sidetracked and we're more looking at the symptoms as to rather than what's really put us there. And of course, that part of you and I, the higher self, it's connected to source. It's connected to white light. It loves you. It absolutely has our back whilst we're here. And of course, we feel quite separate. We always feel quite alone when we get here. It's not until we kind of start realising that we get on our path of our spiritual journey that we begin to realise that there's so much love, there's so much support. We can then understand why we're feeling, in this topic we're talking about, why we're not happy. We can understand and get a sense of why we don't feel happy. Because this part of us knows. It feels when things are not right or when we get stuck. And this is the part really that knows how to find that real happiness. We can have the fleeting moments, they're wonderful. But when we've got genuine, real inner joy and happiness, regardless of what's going on around us, that's incredible. That's a level of really living life from the inside out. Because there is a saying, it's not the problem, that's the problem, it's our reaction to the problem. So when we change our reaction, then quite often the problem isn't really a problem anymore. So this is really powerful because we are living really a lot of what's going on. It's all a projection of what's in our mind. So in order for us to find real happiness in our lives, it's more to do with hearing that higher self, getting into that frequency and listening to that part. And that comes through as intuition, that little voice, that nudge, when to do something and not to do it, when to listen to something and not to, read something, to go here, go there. And this is something else, to do what we said we wanted to do. Because this is quite an interesting thing, because this is what really happened with me, is where we can hear, listen, but then the doing bit might be the bit where we get stuck. So what is that part of you saying to you? What is it letting you know about your happiness, to find that real joy and happiness? What does it want you to do? Is your happiness tied up with what you said you wanted to do? I know mine was. And I know mine is. Because it might be quite often the thing that you want to do, it might be the thing that you resist. What do you want to do? It might be the thing you're resisting. That can happen. You can feel so scared, or it puts you completely out of your comfort zone. But it's kind of something that you wish, if you had the money or you had the time or you had whatever it is, you would do. But it's sort of tied up with a level of resistance. And this is something that I experienced, because on my path there was a couple of things that I resisted. I didn't even like what it was. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't prepared for it. Actually, I'm a little bit too fearful for that. Not sure I'll be able to do it. But what I didn't expect is that when you start to do the thing that you said you do, and remember, the said you do is the bit that's the part of your higher self, the inner voice, is the bit that's driving us, that navigates us. That's actually where the real happiness is. And that real happiness is completely on another level. So really, what's happening with you at the moment? Where does your happiness lie? Where are you on your path at the moment? What does that part of you want you to know as to where you can find that real happiness? And sometimes there's a lot, and I know that can happen, because it was for me. We don't even know what that could be. We haven't even got that far. We just know that we're not fully happy, but we don't know actually what will make us happy. And that's why I work with people one-to-one, and really connecting in with that light that's within, and learn how to meditate in a way that you can tune in to that frequency. Because like we said, it's not going to come from outside of us. It's these kind of, where do we go next? What do we do? It's not something that we can get from someone else. They can certainly put pointers and maybe give us a little bit of, if it's a psychic reading or something like that, it can help us a little bit. But ultimately, it's that part of you, the higher self, that is what's going to speak to you, help you to find out what it is that's perhaps at the moment not giving you the real happiness that you want and that you deserve. So it's really about tuning in to that part of us that when we can find out what it is, and kind of, if you like, not only find out but work out what it is that is making us feel unhappy. What it is that's making us feel that we're not on track. And this is a really good way, and this is just something that I do and I help others to do, is to listen to that bit, because that intuition tells us, it speaks to us. But sometimes we get it in drips and drabs, or when we do get it, we kind of don't trust it. So this is where I would encourage you to tune in to what makes you genuinely happy. Now we're here in the physical, and we've got to have fun in the physical. It's that thing that sometimes we can get a little bit trapped in, that misconception that it's all got to be spiritual things. Well, we come here as well in the physical and in the flesh. And that's something that came up on my path. We do need to enjoy here. We do need to have that happiness. And it's having a balance of that, as well as the balance of just is what's going to bring us more than the surface level of happiness. And this is something which I think really helped me out, which I'd like to share, is the fact that even if you feel a little bit apprehensive, or the very thing that you kind of resist and you don't want to do, and you actually start doing it, you really do get a level of happiness, like I said, on another level. It's also a way to track and to sort of make sure that you are, if you like, doing what you said you would do. Because it's going to bring us real joy and real happiness. So where is that with you? Where are you at with how to try and find this happiness? Because most of us do look for the physical, but sometimes when we get to that point where the surface level happiness doesn't really do it anymore, we're looking for something more and something deeper. And this is where we will feel low. This is exactly what can happen when we don't listen to that part. So I hope you found this helpful, a little bit of clarity and how to find your own real happiness. This is something that's going to come within. It's a part of you that loves you, it's connected to Source, and it will help you even with the most practical things on an everyday level of life, where you can enjoy physical happiness, but also enjoy the more deeper parts, the parts of you that said they wanted to do things here, that wanted to experience things. This is a soul lens. This is a part of you that really, if you get off path or you get stuck, it's going to affect you. You're going to feel it. But that part of you equally will always just send you a nudge. Try to get your attention so that you'll be able to hear what it is that it is and what you can do to get out of that. So I hope this has helped those of you that perhaps need a little bit of clarity in this and just what you needed. So hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the other podcasts. And you can find me on YouTube, Spotify, and listed on other platforms. And if you also want a little bit of help or maybe a little bit of assistance, why not visit the website of learnreikiandconnect.co.uk. You'll find out a lot of information there about the home learning of Reiki, where you can do that online. You know, this is an incredible way in which we can just use the power of intention in order to connect in with the light. Or it might be that you'd like to work with me over Skype, learning how to connect into that your way. And of course, we've got the QHHT hypnosis and the Akashic records. And also, if you really like to use the pendulum, then there is the art of dowsing, where you can just watch that online workshop, how to speak with your higher self using the pendulum. So until next time, do take care. Bye for now.